A novel between the period 2000 to 2020, Writing is Time, Volume 1, is a textual analysis whose genesis is predicated on the words write and write and write and write and write. Succinctly, this expression was made by the late Dr. Joseph Drew in 1995 on the day I graduated. We discuss post-graduation plans. In context, Dr. Drew was my advisor, mentor, and professor during my academic tenure as a media arts major at New Jersey City University. On reflection, contextualizing the professor's good-natured words, write and write and write and write, is an ad nauseum phrase viewed through various cultural lenses and which has emerged in my career post-graduation, which I have summarized as between the period 2000 and 2020, writing is time. In this cultural space, what was uniquely interesting, we occupy the precincts of each other's specific society's customs, which was very much ingrained in the culture. In context, juxtaposing the interpretation of write and write and write and write against my actions as being an author implies relevance because writing is part of culture. Moreover, it is logical to believe that in every geographical space, culture is seen in people's writing. However, a word of caution. Although the concept of culture is very complicated, yet the word has numerous connotations. The word culture is most commonly used in many ways in the area of excellence of taste, in the fine arts and humanities, also known as high culture. Historically, writing is the process of using symbols, letters of the alphabet, punctuation, and spaces to communicate thoughts and ideas in a readable form. Writing can also refer to the work or career of an author, as in Shakespeare. The underpinning of this intellectual discourse is influenced by Newton's laws of motion of classical mechanics, is also more generally stated as to every action there's always a pose and equal reaction, or the mutual actions of two bodies upon each other are always equal and directed to contrary parts, is very critical throughout this discourse. The specifics and connectivity of culture are intertwined within my lived experience, at the same time inspired me to create a textual analysis of the words write and write and write and write is the predicate of this narrative. In addition, I randomly selected excerpts from among my 152 publications, which constitute an anthology between the periods 2000 to 2020, are framed in this discourse within chapters 1 through chapter 40. In this text, between the period 2000 to 2020, writing is time. Plausibly, I must confess that there are numerous ways of interpreting, since it is both a professional task and one of thrusts. Therefore, the fact that I am interpreting and I am undertaking the task of extemporaneously conveying messages between languages and cultures imputes the fact that I am also keeping the professional content. In the scheme of things, my actions as it relates to my interpretation of the words deemed right and right and right and right without reservation is implicit, and the same has characteristics that are associated with a reporter, author, grant writer, cultural practitioner, columnist, communications officer, social media manager, communication specialist, advertising manager, copywriter, public relations manager, executive assistant, content marketer, proposal writer, content strategist, professor, and director of communications, and some measure of being profusely productive or fruitful has to stand the test of time. Therefore, in all plausibility, writing from the perspective of someone who has a passion and a greater appreciation for education and research, who bring a professional position, qualifies me to embrace, understand, mitigate, and contextualize the doctrine of between the period 2000 to 2020. Writing is time is phenomenal. At this juncture, the tone, the tenor, and context is set for this intellectual discourse. Let us put things in perspective and not conflate this issue as to whether these words right and right and right should be construed as coincidence or prophetic. However, in this academic space, the same establishes context for what has followed between the period 2000 to 2020. Writing is time. This statement is also deemed a theoretical phrase and cultural expression. Nevertheless, when the same is further deconstructed in a philosophic and metaphoric sense, people are perceived as the conduits of identities such as race, gender, class, and ethnicity, and identification, a view espoused by Stuart Hall. To this end, the more that I engage my cognitive, deductive, and inductive skills as an author, media arts specialist, student of film, and licensed cultural practitioner, I have deduced that culture is a way of life. In light of this declaration and clarification, presumably the aforesaid is learned and practiced by humankind, combined with a close-up frame in my field of view through my lens of the particular tenure of Ralph Linton's expression, culture as the way of its members, the collection of ideas and habits which they learnt are shared and transmitted from generation to another generation. I was compelled to contextualize this text between the period 2000 to 2020. This text is about decoding, symbolism, theories, timelines, and a developmental process which is analyzed through the way of life lens, intertwined with various theoretical writing techniques. As a result of this pronouncement, presumably, the question I have asked, does this clarification make me complicit because of culture? Overall, through my lens of context as an author, student of film, media arts specialist, and licensed cultural practitioner, the more that I practice writing is seemingly infectious, among other elements that provide scope for me to hone my cognitive, deductive, and inductive skills. Moreover, I am at my natural best because I have embraced and understand the construct human behavior and that culture is no longer fixed. If it ever was, it is essentially fluid and constantly in motion. This makes it so because it is difficult to define any culture in only one way. Therefore, my action has resulted me better able to clearly articulate and enunciate what makes me feel fulfilled and to better understand what drives my behavior throughout the years of studying and practicing as an author, cinematographer, licensed cultural practitioner, media arts specialist, and publisher. To activate my absorption within the spheres of this theoretical abstract, which underpins and functions as a pretext of this scholarly conversation through my lens of this textual analysis between the period 2000 to 2020, writing is time, was framed in 1,826 pages, 42 chapters, and contextualized in ISBN 9781 63649 0793.